Yes, well done. Well done, Anne. Yeah, we're going to spend a few minutes thinking about those readings and what we've also looked at throughout our time this morning. And first off, we're going to look at a reading from the Old Testament that Jesus clearly knew about and was important to why he continued on this metaphor of growth and seeds in kingdom. And you'll see why as I read from Ezekiel here. So this is Ezekiel 17 and it's verses 22 to 24. This is what the sovereign Lord says. I myself will take a shoot from the very top of a cedar tree and plant it. I'll break off a tender sprig from its topmost shoots and plant it on a high and lofty mountain. On the mountain heights of Israel I will plant it. It will produce branches and bear fruit and become a splendid cedar. Birds of every kind will nest in it. They will find shelter in the shade of its branches. All the trees of the forest will know that I, the Lord, bring down the tall tree and make the low tree grow tall. I dry up the green tree and make the dry tree flourish. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will do it. And that particular reading was done at a very important time for the people of Israel, because it was just ahead of when the Babylonians came over, overtook Israel, and in fact all the leaders and the important people were sent into exile. So at that point they've got this message of hope, but in fact they've got to go through a pretty rough and terrible time for quite a long time before these things were going to happen. And sometimes that's how life is. I mean, we're thinking about you, Hilda, this coming week. You know, we've got that hope. Well, hope of real mobility going forward. And I say you have to bring it down to the here and now, to those things that you might think are small or insignificant, but this is about, yes, your own journey of life and a hope as you go forward. Because I know I spoke to Thomas Ken in the week, who did his first trip off in the week. He's got 2 new knees. For those that don't know, it's the first time he'd gone off on his own, on the train, went a long way away as well.
And he went without a stick.
Went without a stick as well. So these are things that Hilda can hope for, and we've got good hope for. And faith it will happen. We just know between now and then we've got some pain and a difficult few weeks to go through. But that's it. It's having that thing to look forward to. Now I don't know. I know most people reasonably well, but I don't know how everybody understands sometimes the readings that come on the screen and we look at, because they can be quite hard to understand, and it may be that you don't really get the sort of the growth idea, the seeds and letting it grow and plant and go into something new and great. That might not be something that sort of relates to you at all, and you might actually find out that using some other imagery might be helpful to you. I think most people here have done some sort of planting and gardening and perhaps can understand where it's coming from. But certainly if you're, yes, not all adults have done that, and certainly if you're a bit younger, you haven't. So in the week, a good example, I'm glad you're here, Trevor and Joan, because I can tell you what happened to your tomato plants here. So I went around and visited Trevor and Joan early on in the week, and they gave me some tomato plants, great. And I knew that there was too many for me, so I was going to use them for Girls Brigade on Tuesday night. So I planted up the ones that I've used at home, and I thought, well, I'll give the girls at Girls Brigade, I'll give them a couple of plants each that they can look after, nurture through the holidays, and see if anybody, I'll give a prize out to whoever gets the most fruit or looks after it the best. But the thing is, if you've never been taught how to sort of properly even just transplant a little seedling, a little plant, you don't know what to do. So I was starting to take my stuff out. We did it out in the middle of the lawn. I turned my back, went and got the rest of my bag, and I'd bought about 30 odd sort of bigger plant pots. What were they doing? They'd been scattered all over the garden, and they were playing football with them, throwing at each other's heads, having a great time. And so that's how it began. I then said, right, well, we're going to try and start planting up now. I bought a couple of trowels just to show them, but of course a big trowel with these little seedlings, let's see how many we can get. Because no, you've got to be gentle with it. You've got to be gentle with them. in the end, I said, right, well, first off, let's put, just trying to calm them down a bit. So excited, wanted it to happen straight away. I'd bought 3 lots of compost. I'd got a plant pot's worth and 2 other bags worth. And of course, there's hands in there. Where do I throw it? Throw it in everywhere. Just calm down a minute. So in the end, I managed to get them, firstly, to get a couple of pots, because there was enough for 2 each. So get a pot. Put the soil in, and of course some of them just pile it all the way up to the top after about 30 seconds, after about 3 seconds, should I say. No, take some out, put some in. You can imagine, this is what it's like every Tuesday night. And eventually I got most of them with just half a plant pot's worth of soil, of compost in it. And then it was gently trying to get some of these plants, that they'd nurtured them from seed. They were still alive. I said, getting some out, putting them in, and then trying to gently get the rest of the soil in and pat it down. But it was teaching them just how to do this thing. You've got to be gentle with them, especially with young tomato plants. They just snap in the wind. I think most of them survived, and then we got them lined up, and then of course then came the watering. That's a whole another different kettle of fish, because they all want to water. Bless them, they're keen, but it's then, in the end we ended up using, I didn't bring my watering can, so I ended up using the teapots. So I filled the teapots, our big teapots, with water. I had lots of volunteers, and of course they were falling out. I want to do it, no, I want to do it. I take it in turns, just go along. And in the end, just a little bit, because of course they'll either want to tip it all out and drown the thing, or disappear down the garden. In the end, they were putting too little in. They were just putting. They've got this. Imagine some of them are only about this big, so they've got this huge teapot. Put in about 2 drops. Just put a bit more in now. Oh. Eventually, we got them watered. We then went to try to do the sunflowers that we planted a couple of weeks ago. Put a bit of water in them, and that was more of the same. And then they wanted to know whose was whose, and in the end, everybody took some home, including some of the older ones. So we waited to see how it works out, and I hope to have some good stories come back. But that links in really well to what we're doing today. Is in fact, when you started planting your seeds, Reverend Jen, you didn't know that I was going to end up doing that with them. And we don't know now where they've gone on to, and in fact what conversations will happen as a result going forward. And this is a sort of explanation, part of an explanation about what Jesus is saying. Certainly about that first part of the parable where he's saying that the farmer goes away and he just comes back, and it's sort of, these things have happened. Anyway, there's some things that you just do, and it just goes off and does it on its own without us getting that involved. And we recognise that the little tomato plants that you've grown from seed, that it's a good thing. And we recognise that it's of God, that it's a nice thing, that it's a thing that nurtures creation and has conversations, and it'll grow food that we can eat, and it's a nice thing to do. But yeah, you didn't know when you started that, or even when you gave me them on Monday, whether that was going to happen. And that's good. And it is. This is all where things go and just happen, which is really good. So I'm hoping the girls have learnt a little bit about growing and how you have to be a little bit careful with these things, not just as I described. And maybe if that doesn't, maybe for them something else will work better. Maybe it is working towards a holiday or Christmas or birthday or other things that you just have to plan sometimes. You put a plan down and then you sort of let it grow and develop. And part of the things of what Josh is doing these days, I mean, Josh has been doing tests every day for the last 2 weeks, haven't you? Across all the subjects. And part of that is to plan for your future, which is later on in the year where he chooses options for his GCSEs. And then the GCSEs then may lead to sixth form there, maybe college, maybe A-levels, and then that's it. You sort of have a plan and a thought of how you may grow as a person, and you go forward. That may be more helpful than the plant metaphor. And taking, again, that first part of the reading and having another example, aside from what we've just described with Trevor and Joan, where sometimes just good things happen. Anne had a good story in the week where her friend Janet, Sandra, I told you I was getting mixed up, it's Janet and Janet. sort of call her Sandra in my mind. So Sandra. So I know that Sandra came round your house with a big box full of food, saying, I've got this from the One Stop. And he's...
No, we went to...
Oh, you went to get
We
it?
had the coffee morning, and Sandra went to get the milk in One Stop, just below. And when she was in there, a long while ago when the coffee morning started, she asked the manager if he'd donate something, which she was hoping for a few packets of biscuits. Well, they didn't materialise. Now, 9 months down the line, he says, oh, I've got something for you, Sandra, but you'll have to take the trolley. And she looked at him a bit vacant. And he'd got 3 big boxes of groceries he wanted to donate. Well, the groceries were no good for coffee morning. And she looked at me and she said, I know where you're going to take them. So I phoned Mike and told him I'd got all this stuff and I couldn't move it. And he fetched me Thursday morning in the grocery and they went to the food bank. Now, why suddenly do that? I know Sandra said she knew he'd been sorting the shop out. And he found all sorts of tins, didn't he? Everything, beans, macaroni, tomatoes, you name it, we'd got it. Cereals and all sorts. I had 2 or 3 tins out of it, so did Sandra, and the rest of it, well, it went to the food bank, and it was used. So somebody up there was watching what we were doing, otherwise it wouldn't have happened.
That's exactly right. I've just brought the reading back on screen there, that first bit there. Just spot out there, verse 28. All by itself the soil produces corn. First the sort, then the ear, then the full grain in the ear. So you can trace this story back, however far you want to take it back, really. You can take it back years and years, actually, depending on where you want to stop. If you wanted to start just the start of 2013, when we as the churches together decided to do a food bank, and that was after a year of working out what we were going to do together, and that was after years of the churches together and ourselves growing in different ways, got us to that point where we had the confidence to do it. And then since 2013, that development of the food bank, all the different stories and the ways that people have contributed, brought together a little moment there where, out of the blue, somebody at One Stop down the road that produces all these donations. Sandra knew about Anne and the food bank, and we've got those donations come in, and most of them went out last week, and I've got a few more left to go out this week. And that's exactly what this is saying here. Sometimes these things just happen, but we're doing it in Jesus' name, and that's sometimes these things just sprout up and happen. And I think that's to give you real encouragement. Because sometimes you think it's all about toil and trying to get a certain result or something like that. But in fact, what God is saying here about trying to make it on earth as it is in heaven is that when you do things right in His name, it'll just happen. And I'm really pleased with that. And what we've done, what I've done is I've written a letter on our behalf to both Sandra and the person at One Stop. And I know that he'll probably end up giving us some more things as well.
That's all he asked for, was a letter he could show to head office where the stuff had gone, because there was a lot of stuff. And Sandra says to me, you write a letter, you better write it than me. And then Jack said, why don't you ask Mike to write a letter? They will know for definite then where it has gone. And that's what Mike's done.
Yeah. And that's it. This is how we all, as individuals, when we gather together as a Christian community, doing good things, living out our faith, enables sometimes unexpected things to happen. And it's about spotting little examples like that, thinking, this is how it happens. And I was happy that these readings came up today, because it's how my own personal thinking has developed this past year, is that I no longer sort of think of myself or us as almost just, I don't think of us as a little church anymore, or as a little chapel that's got a certain number of people in it, and we're trying to do church in a sort of a traditional old way where it's Sometimes it is about how many are sat down on a Sunday morning, or how many people you've got in your membership, or how many people you've been baptised, how many people you've got tithing, or anything like that. It's about, I'm thinking that we are a gathered group of people in faith, in Jesus, are actually trying to make that's it. It's a Christian word, the kingdom, making the kingdom happen on earth, and that word, that Christian loaded word of kingdom means making it as God intended, a place of peace, love, happiness, harmony, people working together, being together. Yeah, it's simple stuff, loving one another. It's Jesus' message, and the gospel is often misunderstood for being far more complicated than it is, and it's not. And I see us together as being a gathered people together that come together like this on a Sunday and at other times in the week, and then we actually go out and live this out in our just sometimes out shopping, coffee mornings, things that we do together here, and that's how I see us. I don't see us as that. I see us far broader than that. We're actually making it on earth as it is in heaven, and we're just a group of people that recognise this is our core, this is the family home, and then we go out and do it. And I hope that you get some sort of sense of that too. I don't get worried about, ultimately, I want as many people to come here as possible. I want as many people to be baptised and have a journey of faith, and I am there 100% all the time. But I don't worry about that. I want to see it. I want to see it as God intended happening out in our world, and it will happen locally, in our lives, perhaps in our family, and it will spread out because we do things that go locally, nationally, internationally, and some things we won't even ever find out about. But that's ultimately what we're trying to do for God.
Right.
Yes?
Can I ask a question? That Old Testament reading, it gave me the impression that if you get too big for your boots, he's going to knock you down. So you sort of don't get above yourself. Have I got that right? I
think part of that, within that reading of certainly not going ahead of yourself, seeing yourself above others, is very much part of what God is saying.
Because you took the big tree down, didn't you?
Yes.
And planted another one.
Yeah. Because ultimately it's about being a God of the poor, friend of the weak. Give us compassion, we pray, to say these things, that no matter. Ultimately, God is about a God of justice and equality. And thanks for that, Anne. So just bringing all these thoughts together, it's about making this, on earth as it is in heaven, a kingdom place. And what I quite like the idea is that this is the way that we grow going forward. If you like, our eternal hope goes on from that. There's a bit in the song, that 10,000 Reasons, bit where he talks about it being for 10,000 years and then forevermore. And it's that whole thought that our eternal hope, our resurrection hope, isn't just about us, as I've said before, sort of sitting on a 5-star heavenly cruise. You get bored very quickly. The idea with God's and it's the amount of conversations I've had just of late of people that have retired, done whatever they've wanted for a year, and then got really bored, and then they've gone back to work. It may have been out of their choice and not had to do it, so that's good. But I think part of the ongoing growth with God, growth into God, is actually quite an exciting thing. It's because we are people that actually want to grow, learn, unite and go forward together. And I find that all very exciting. And everybody here, young or old, can take part in that. Just going to close off now with a song called By Your Side. So it's quite a slow song. You can just stay seated if you know it, sing along. If you don't, just look at the sides. But it's that hope that when we come together by Jesus' side, that our love for him and our love for others will grow stronger each day.